Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to announce our next keynote speaker. And she is coming from Australia, actually Brisbane University. And I call her by now, I'm sorry when I say that, the godmother of Intuiition. You published 3 books with so many different researchers. You push the topic from not known by the people to make it more famous. From you elaborated with your co-authors on the Eastern world. You made new dimensions. You pushed it open. Last year we discussed matters on anticipation with Dr. Francesca McCartney and Dr. Dean Reddin. And not all the people appreciate their work, but you do. You take all researchers seriously. You give everyone a chance to publish, to talk. You're discussing and criticizing them to bring it to a higher level. And I have to say, from your personal appearance and you are such a lovely person. I'm happy every year to see you. I can show all your books. I have it in my drawer. I read them all. And I'm so happy to have you here today. And Dr. Marta Sinclair from Brisbane University in Australia, the floor is yours. We love to hear more about the latest research and Intuiition and all your endeavor. And I hope with our crazy approach, we can help you and support you at the AOM. And I wrote you, if you invite me, Marta, I'm there. I'm there. I'm coming. Wherever you want me to go, I'm with you, Marta.
Oh, that'll be an exciting new year for sure. Thank you so much, Markus. And it's lovely to see 2 Markuses here. I am also happy to see Markus Anthony here. We had some conversations last year, and congratulations on your book on metaverse and other areas, which I'm sure you talked about before I joined the conference. And big congratulations to our organizer, Markus. This is already, I believe, the 7th international conference. It's a huge undertaking, and the numbers are growing. And then having a special session on Intuiition, it's fantastic. So I was thinking that I could approach the topic somewhat differently from the previous years. And of course, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with your participants, some new and some old, meaning in terms of participation, not age, of course, for the 3rd year. So that we talk more about what's coming up new. So let me see if I successfully share my screen. Share. Yeah. Can you please confirm that you can see my screen? And perfect. Yeah, I'm shifting to the presentation mode. Here we go. And if we run into any technical difficulties, please let me know. So the latest Intuiition research, a challenging topic to sum up in half an hour or so, but I'll do my best. As Markus mentioned, I have been, well, I founded, but I have been chairing and leading the community of researchers and practitioners on Intuiition, which is called Intuiition in Organizations, for 15 years now. And we have convened more or less annually the Intuiition Symposia at the Academy of Management annual conference. I summarize some of the research so far in 3 Intuiition handbooks, edited handbooks, and we also post some information in our LinkedIn group. So if you're interested, send me an email. It's a private group, so I would invite you and talk now offline about that we have possibly some people who attended my talks in the past year or two, but there may be also other people who have not. So let me still borrow a couple of slides from previous years. I added some material and I'll focus possibly on other or different areas, just to make sure that we are all on the same baseline. So when we talk about intuition, and my colleagues and other speakers, Markus, Anthony, Francesca McCarthy, Dean Reddin, and so on, may have a different perspective. But from my perspective, we have already acknowledged in our community of intuition researchers and practitioners that there, because we are so multidisciplinary, and of course each discipline seems to have a preference for their own terminology, and sadly, even though that situation has been improving, a lot of disciplines still work more or less in silos. So there has not been sufficient cross-pollination, and that's why there is not always a full consensus on how we should define or describe intuition. And that is one of the reasons why we continue researching and push the boundaries, we agreed to respectfully disagree. And that gave us an opportunity to reach at least a partial consensus or consensus on different directions in people's thinking and still move forward. So what we have agreed, obviously, that intuition is different from our conscious rational thinking. Of course, as you know, in the research and even in the popular literature, there is different terms. Some people talk about reasoning, others about rationality. Some use the term deliberation. Many people, myself included, started with originally with using more narrow terms such as analysis or logic. So everything which happens at least partially on the conscious level, and we can either upfront or from the very beginning, or at least retroactively or retrospectively surface and determine how we arrived at a particular conclusion, be it a decision, a solution, etc. So that is one level. And what we talk about when we discuss intuition in my field and in my circle of colleagues, we talk about what is underneath or below consciousness or awareness. Some people use the term subconscious. I personally prefer the term non-conscious, but it's just a matter of terminology. And that means that there is something different happening, not only in the way how our mind and body, nowadays we are paying much closer attention to the body as well, how they process information, whether it's sequential or holistic in terms of like a jigsaw puzzle-like picture and so on, but also what happens on the neurological level, which parts of the brain and which neural synapses are engaged. So I started with a more complex definition when I got intrigued in intuition in the very beginning. And then simplified. So direct knowing without any conscious reasoning. So we know something, but we do not know why we know it or how we know it. And even if we try hard to backtrack, we cannot determine what occurred in our mind and body. As I said before, the information surfaced on the conscious level. We already agreed that there are different aspects of intuition which are at play, which is, of course, the cognitive aspect linked to thinking, or some people call it intellectual aspects, if we have any psychologists among us, they would rightfully argue that cognition is everything, which occurs in our mind. But for the lack of other terms, usually when we talk about a cognitive element in intuition, then we talk about the thinking or intellectual element. And then the other elements would be affective, meaning different kinds of emotions, moods, and emotional feelings. And what's coming up more into the focus of intuition research more recently would be the sensory aspect, our visceral or body-based feelings. So here we are. So what we also talked about in previous 3 years already is situations this becomes useful. So obviously myself coming mostly from the business area, or to be more specific, from management perspective, I'm interested in people and the soft side of their knowledge and skills, which is more challenging sometimes to quantify. So the original area of interest was in the so-called VUCA situation, the term which was coined by the military, I believe, during World War II. So volatile, things are changing, they are unpredictable. There is no pattern in forecasting that everything will be going just upwards by a certain percentage and so on. So we have less certainty, we have more complexity, and even what we sometimes forget, just how to define the initial problem that we need to address with a solution or a decision is more ambiguous. So that was obviously already since the 1990s of big interest of people in business and hence also business researchers, because the traditional decision-making, problem-solving models did not suffice anymore. I would add to that VUCA acronym also the volume of data we process. And what we often talk about, there is not sufficient data. For example, when I was still in the private industry in Silicon Valley way back, we had many projects which did not have any precedents. It means we could not go back to our database or to our library and check how a similar situation or project were handled in the past. So meaning not enough data available. But inadequacy may be also in the time element. We may have huge amounts of volumes of data, but very little time to process. So that's why I call it inadequate. And then the last part, the fast-paced, high pressure, obviously, when we have to deal with situation quickly, then it creates more pressure. And of course, it can be good pressure that forces us to focus and become more productive, or it can be the so-called bad pressure when we either freeze in paralysis, such as Herbert Simon already discussed way back, and we cannot concentrate and so on. So when we look at the relationship of intuition to different areas, and that's what I touched upon in previous years as well, but I would like to extend. So the first area which we researched was around decision-making, because when business situations became less predictable, that's where the need was. And that's linked mostly to the so-called expert intuition. Some of the intuition researchers have departed from using the typology labels And they claim that as we have learned more about intuition, this is too simplistic and it's much more complex. How we should approach and classify intuition, and that's why they would prefer different terms: form, sort, kind, or something else yet to be developed. But for the simplicity purpose tonight, well, it's my night, it's your mid-morning, I believe, then I would still use that. So the expert intuition is usually linked to a particular area of expertise. So I may be an expert in accounting, but I know very little about project management or playing chess, etc. So obviously, then in my area of expertise, I will make decisions differently than in the area where I am uncertain or I know nothing about. Yeah. So that particular type of expertise doesn't translate that well into other contexts. But it works a lot with holistic decisions, and that's very useful in situations when we need a fast decision. So some of you who come from the decision-making discipline are familiar with the work of Gary Klein, for example, naturalistic decision-making. He studied firefighters and so on. So that would be this type. Now, what I said already last year, and it's still valid, even though new inroads have been made a little bit, is a lack of sufficient research into problem solving. It's very interesting. We usually look at decision making. I agree that problem solving entails many decisions to be made, but it has a different focus. And that's where actually scoping the initial problem becomes much more important. So it's not yes and no, or should we do it this way, that way, or third way, and so on. But it's what's the issue and what kind of solution do we need? Yes, the ambiguity gains much more weighting here. Of course, problem solving, and that's the so-called creative intuition, coming up with different novel solutions. And that also, and that's of course becoming more and more in demand, especially of our heavy emphasis on innovation and the need for innovation, but also in other types of solutions out of the box, which we see also in on organizational level in cross-pollination between disciplines. For example, I saw hotel industry hiring people from train, transport, logistics, or airlines because they wanted specific type of expertise, marrying, let's say, the high knowledge of customer service and the high skill level coming from hospitality, and having a different approach to logistics and to revenue management coming from the other disciplines I just mentioned. And that, of course, creates more challenges in terms of terminology, but also yields more out-of-the-box solutions and has an impact on teamwork. So here we are going from individual level of using intuition to also team level or possibly organization level. Then what's quite interesting is the personal well-being area. And that's what I believe Markus commented on after the other Markus's talk in terms of harmony with the world, harmony with other people. But I think it started already before our experience with COVID, but COVID accelerated it. The importance of well-being of our employees as a strategic asset. And that requires an increased level of self-awareness, ability to respond to others, and ability to respond to environment. So this is, if we want to use a particular term, we could call it, and some researchers, colleagues have been using the term social intuition, which I have been coining under a different label for a long time, such as interpersonal, meaning how we interact with each other, how important are relationships, and so on. With interpersonal intuition, the challenge was that it was based mostly on the discipline of transpersonal psychology, which traditional psychologists, of course, are not comfortable with. Yeah, I also invited way back contributions from intuition researchers working in the quantum physics paradigm, because they could explain it in more scientific terms. There, I'm still waiting for the critical mass to develop, because not that many intuition researchers or even practitioners are familiar sufficiently with quantum physics so that they could use it as their theoretical framework. All right, social intuition. And then what also I had both Markus's talk about is moral intuition. I put it into the area of sustainability, which I broadly linked to also moral leadership, ethics, morality, holistic assessment, and so on. Now, the interesting perspective, and actually I co-authored recently a chapter where we discuss this from the perspective of training, intuition training and intuition development, is that moral intuition, number one, has much higher infusion of affect, different feelings and so on. And number two, that's my personal perspective, is more heavily influenced by cultural values. And when I heard the end of the previous talk, unfortunately, I had some technical difficulties, so could not join sooner. And then the comments in the discussion, what I was thinking about national cultural values and different cultural models where actually, and if we look at intuition from the moralistic, sociologistic perspective, such as Jonathan Haidt, who actually distinguished three ways how people approach morality and ethical judgments, which are not only infused with affect, but are governed by prevalent cultural values. And if we, actually, I have been teaching cross-culture management for years. It is one of my staple and also my most favorite courses to teach. So out of the models, I think, for example, Klughorn and Strodbeck have some particular explanations, but that would be a topic for another talk, of course. And I'm also seeing the different hierarchy of needs when we look at the psychology model of Maslow. Yeah, so quite a bit on that. So hopefully we have established just very briefly in a nutshell what intuition is in terms of how I and the group I've been engaged with usually using it, and what are its practical applications. Before I continue, what I noticed recently is an emergence of the fifth type. Walsh and other people in the Business Horizons published an article. They also have a chapter in the recent Leibovitz book. I'll share with you some information on these resources at the end of my talk, and that is a temporal intuition. I am still looking into it, but it's the type of intuition where people know the right timing. for doing something, sharing information, etc. So you see, typology keeps on changing, and of course our understanding of each type changes with it. So without ado, what are the most recent or more recent areas for intuition researchers to explore? So for your convenience, I just put a summary of the Intuition Showcase, which we held at this year's Academy of Management in Boston. And we had a very strong interest. So despite the fact that you can see we had quite a few topics presented, it was only a fraction of the submissions. So I was, as all usual, I'm always very selective, but still. And that's why, because this time it was already conducted in person. So there is the time constraint for the length of each symposium. So I submitted 2 symposia, and with the help of the conference organizers, we scheduled them back to back. So in a way, it was like 2 sessions of an intuition showcase. And the first symposium focused on new theoretical and methodological perspectives. The second symposium on new research, empirical research, which had a strong training implication. So please bear in mind that this is not everything which emerged in intuition research this year, because not everybody was available and able to travel to Boston. But what I did, I summarized the topics. So these are not the exact titles of the presentations, and also put in brackets the country of origin, so that you have an idea how international this research is, even though we're still making deeper inroads into some non-English speaking parts of the world where colleagues do not have the habit to publish in English that much. Okay. And then also I mentioned sometimes in brackets, what's the focus? So let's just go through that and I flesh out some of the key points of each presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the chat, and hopefully we will still have a few minutes after my talk to address your perspective, which would be wonderful. So Symposium 1. As Markus knows, there is a strong intuition group in Norway that has been working very closely with the Norwegian military for years. So they have been exploring the role of intuition in crisis management that could be applicable to combat situations and so on. And what they developed here, yet to be tested empirically, I believe that they may have started the empirical study already, is how, but we have large scale and fairly longitudinal crisis, how people make decisions in combination of intuition and analysis. And they developed a fairly sophisticated model of where is the tipping point. It doesn't mean that the person would use intuition only or analysis only. They may rely on it fully or predominantly in particular area, but usually it's a combination. And our stream of research in the past few years has been putting more and more emphasis on not only how these two ways of information processing coexist, but also how they are integrated and in which context or situation it goes one way or another way. Again, that would be a talk for a whole hour but I just want to scratch the surface to give you an idea. So this is good progress there. Then a group of colleagues in the US, they have been developing a model of team decision making for several years. In terms of course, there is a question. Does such a thing as a team or group intuition exist? And there are different perspectives on that. But whether it's that the collective decides collectively, intuitively, but collectively, or whether it is that everybody contributes something and then they incorporate it into a collective decision or solution, then still there is some team dynamics. And then they already did testing of that, and now they extended their exploration further, and they're asking how does apply to virtual situations. Because of course, since COVID, we've been working more and more virtually. Of course, we have the advantage, the same as now, to see each other on screen, but still it's not the same thing in terms of the transfer of non-verbal cues as if we were sitting in one room around the same table. Yeah, so that's another question. Then the third dot, that comes from a strategic perspective. And the question, management researchers usually work with the dual process model. They may call it something else, or they use specific models within it, but basically saying, all right, so we have here conscious reasoning, non-conscious intuition, and then something happens in between. Now in strategy, researchers often work with the so-called garbage can model. So talking about how we store specific types of information, which might relate to the expert intuition, the different disciplines. And here the Brazilian researchers were saying, wait a minute, we can actually create a model combining both so that intuition then can draw on different garbage cans in terms of a certain expertise from accounting, for example, following on my previous example, and certain experience from management in general, etc. So this is still highly theoretical work. Then the fourth point, intuitive expertise. A group of researchers in Sweden, two of them actually published a book on intuition in the finance industry last year. And they are raising new questions about what is intuitive expertise and how does it link to tacit knowledge and implicit learning. Is it the same thing or is it different? How does it relate and so on? Interestingly, the more questions we ask, the more new areas of potential research for fine-tuning arise. Now, the fifth point in the theoretical stream was a contribution of our colleague in the UK, who rightfully cautioned about how we research intuition when we use only psychological tools. Often we rely on self-report. And how accurate is it? Or how biased is it, either consciously or unconsciously? And he promoted a stronger return to experimental studies, and then, of course, some objective measures, which are usually physiological. Some people measured changes in heartbeat or perspiration, of course, brain mapping. But of course, I personally caution intuition researchers without any medical background to interpret brain maps, because a particular part of the brain may light up not only because we used intuition, but because something else happened in our executive system or even in our autonomous system. And last but not least, theoretically, an interesting collaboration between an English colleague and a colleague who is currently based in Lithuania about studying intuition in terms of language, how people describe things. And there have been several trends. Previously, you may have heard about the so-called clean language, which helps people surface metaphors before they can describe their intuitive information in words. And this is a different way of systematic research of what people say and how they say it. Quite interestingly, and that was actually, yes, it's in the empirical research, so I'll mention it there. The second symposium, empirical research with training implications. So the first study was conducted by an American researcher who did her PhD at British University. She completed already, and she collected data during the first phase of COVID. Living in the New York area, of course, there was a lot of uncertainty, and she collected data from frontline medical professionals. So certainly there were no protocols, no instructions what to do in this case, that case, and how did the emergency medical professionals make a decision, and where did intuition surface in that? Quite substantive. Now, the second study there is by my PhD student who is in her final stages or final month prior to completion. She studied entrepreneurs and she does study. She looked at how can they develop or improve their decision making with the help of intuition, a very much body-based technique. She is a certified focusing practitioner, so she worked with participants in her study to, in a structured way, how to get in touch with the sensing or emotions in their body and surface or extrapolate information from it, starting with a specific business question in the beginning. And let's link it back to the linguistic markers. She found that after when she did post-intervention interviews, that people even changed the language they used. Yeah, so before the training, if she asked them, do you think? They usually answered, yes, I think. Then she changed the question so that she wouldn't be leading them this way. But after the training, and it was a 4-week long intervention, people, even if she asked them, what do you think? They would answer, I feel. So, you know, there was a shift, subconscious shift, without them even realizing it. But of course, it goes much deeper than that. Now, the third study that was an exciting introduction of some research from Africa. It was our first South African presenter. I worked with a group of South African researchers interested in the intuition, but they never presented, comes from the banking industry. Looking at the role of pausing and how pausing can help when making a strategic decision. That was the master thesis of this particular student, which has been now expanded into her PhD project. And here she is exploring how that pausing can help people not only with reflecting upon the decision which is being shaped and formulated, but how could that be used also to access non-conscious information resources such as intuition? Now, the last but least study comes from our Swiss researchers, which was done still when she was completing her postdoc at Harvard. And she has a very quantitative approach. So she designed a simulation and stimulation combination study, computer-based study, where she trained people with the help of emotional subconscious information embedded in it, how to make better or more accurate fast decisions, even in a more financial type of area. And the last study, again, coming from the US, quite interesting. Of course, this study was completed before ChatGPT and other generative artificial intelligence tools were introduced, but it still looked at human resources management, selection of team members, and they looked actually at the flip side, in which situations where the decisions and solutions more accurate and more reliable if people used AI sources and did not rely on their intuition. So you can see that there is a gamut of different areas. So I gave you a summary in a nutshell. And maybe before we give space to you to ask questions, I was thinking about what are the new trends. I started evaluating proposals for the next year's symposium, but also in conversations with researchers around the world. So I think maybe, and this is just a very broad and simplistic division, we could say that there is one chunk or bulk of inquiries which we could label intuition process, and the other one, how intuition can be applied. And of course, that has a extrapolation for training. So in terms of the intuition process, what is the interaction between intuition and deliberation or reasoning? I had recently a conversation with researchers in strategy and forecasting, and also what I witnessed at this year's Academy of Management conference when I attended other presentations, not just my symposium, is that in these particular areas, people look at things in a more mechanistic and linear way, and often omit the importance of intuition. So that's, I think, an extension of the Norwegian study I mentioned. Then the other area which is gaining momentum is, of course, the importance of the body and how much knowledge is contained in our body. So in the intuition training chapter, which I co-authored with my British colleague Eugen Sedler-Smith and Swiss colleague Katharina Fellenhofer, we, for simplicity reasons, separated the training methods into brain-based and body-based. But so there is the question, all right, what comes from the body? And we may hear from one of your other speakers, Dean Reddin here, that certain research suggests that there are also intelligent cells in other parts of our body, not just in the brain and head, right? That may receive information seconds before the brain. It means that it would originate there and then travel up to the brain. So that's the heart area. which I found personally seems to be related more heavily to emotions. But then there is also the digestive system, stomach and intestines. There is probably more truth to our saying that somebody has a gut feeling than we realize. And that type of signal may be different from the heart signal or the brain signal. Now, people coming from psychotherapy, they usually use the term clinical intuition. And again, your speaker, Francesca McCartney, may touch upon that, and she may have a different view on it. They are suggesting that maybe there is even a fourth center in the vagus nerve that is yet to be explored by intuition researchers. All right, and then of course that has application for training. Where was I? Okay, second point, relations, emotions, sensations. That's also not clear. Can one exist without the other? And there are different opinions on that. Then what started emerging more now is the relationship between, I mentioned intuition and tacit knowledge, but also heuristics. And of course, Markus is very familiar with Gerd Gigerenz's work and that German way of thinking, right? Fast and frugal heuristics, etc. And is it the same as intuition, or is intuition embedded in it or not? There are a couple of chapters or sections of chapters in the new Leibowitz book about that. And then the typology I mentioned. And that kind of naturally spills over into the application cluster. Listed here is training and development. So we said already in previous years, and that one of my roles, self-assigned roles, is to narrow the gap between researchers and practitioners. Because there's been a tendency for researchers to come up with very interesting, I would say even fascinating results, but they often do not translate them into practical training tools. On the other hand, we have practitioners, trainers, corporate coaches, and so on, who developed through their experience fairly effective training sessions, but they were struggling to explain why their training tools or particular exercises work. Yeah, so I personally enjoy working with practitioners. It's quite challenging, but I think it pushes the boundary in a good way for both, both camps. All right, so that's the training and development. Then, of course, another question is, so we have now an effective training, or we think it's effective. What's the evidence that it's effective? So in a way, how do we measure it so that we demonstrate that it has a result? And that may be where Markus's and Fatih's and your groups work on a new measurement of intuition with multiple facets comes into place. Now, another area which is related to that is, of course, how do we incorporate teaching intuition into our curriculum? There have been several intuition courses available over the years. I think I talked about some last year. Of course, Eugene Sedler-Smith and the group around him did some work in this respect, even published on it in the UK some years ago. Then more recently, coming from entrepreneurship, Leonie Baldacchino and her students, they piloted a training program for entrepreneurs in Malta, where she's now based. There were also other places, and now most currently, actually at the moment, my former Brazilian PhD student, she is running an undergraduate introductory intuition course at a business school there. But in general, it's not common. The other area which we already covered is culture, more knowledge about the use of intuition in other cultures. We spoke about it, I believe, last year, that even if we remain in Western cultures, there is not enough cross-pollination and knowledge. Very few French researchers, for example, publish in English. The same thing with Italian researchers. And then non-Western, and I'm sure Marcus Anthony already talked quite a bit about that, so I will not go deeper into it. What I would just say is from my personal experience and opinion, it seems to me that non-Western, especially then the Asian cultures based on Confucianism values, and I agree times have changed and moved there as well, see possibly intuition and deliberation more integrated. While the Western cultures, because our schooling has been based on Greek way of thinking. So we have our paradigm, we have dichotomy, so it's either or. So we see it one at the expense of the other. Yeah. So maybe if we want to have a more holistic approach, we have to go broader and look at how one contributes to another. So in my group of researchers, we've got some input in English language publications, obviously from China, from Japan, but that's about it at the moment. There are other researchers, for example, in Indonesia, etc. But if they were schooled in the Western way, often they think and they research in the Western way. Yeah, so we have to be cautious, not just to put the country label to the way of thinking and approaches. And then, of course, as I mentioned, also the collective and team intuitions. Does it exist? How does it function? What are the mechanisms? And so on. So, in the conclusion, there are, of course, other books which are being published on intuition. So I wanted to share at least two, which I'm certain at least some of you are familiar with, that were published this current year. Eugene Sadler-Smith published a book focused on or targeting business readers. You can see different years or dates when you research it on the internet, because the book was ready, I believe, at least electronically, by the time COVID hit. And then with the supply chain interruptions, it took quite a while before it appeared on paper. So the other book is by an American researcher, Jay Leibowitz, who has published a number of edited books, focusing usually the business aspect. And the one which came out this year, as a matter of fact, in October, is looking at, you see, the integration using analysis and intuition. And there are contributions from different disciplines. So I think we kind of covered in a nutshell what is new, at least partially. And I would love to leave the floor to you. So back to you, Marcus, and thank you for listening.
Marta, thank you so much. I took a lot of notes, and there's lots to do, and I know Fatih has a lot of notes too. I think we need to expand our research. You said problem solving, social well-being, morale, and sustainability, ethics, and crisis situations. We are more on the expert side, Fatih and me, so maybe we can expand. Jay Leibowitz is talking in 1 hour probably, so he will introduce his book. And Eugene Smith sent us the video that's already online on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. So we covered the latest books. And on your AOM discussions, I think we go into the brain, heart, and gut feeling deeper with our questionnaire. Emotions we take seriously. We have a little bit of a new typology. And on the application side, well, we have a measurement tool, but our idea would be to bring that into a training program in the future. And with two researchers today, we will elaborate on intuition based on modern technologies. And I think that's not covered yet because a lot of people make their decisions based on their mobile phone. Whatever app they use, ChatGPT or whatever, you need to have an intuition for Google. How do I work with it to get the right information? And the next Googling is prompting. There are schools of how to prompt with ChatGPT, and that will also become more modern and in everybody's use, that we use technology and we ask our personal assistant. So we start researching on that as well. Mohammed, you're free to put on your camera as well. He is researching healthcare with us. He's from Pakistan. But Fatih, you are the head of methodology here in our team.
Hello, Marta. It's very pleasure for me to listen to you again. Thank you for explaining the recent developments about the studies about the different fields of intuition. We are just the measurement side of this field, and trying to find the measurement instrument which is based on the perceptions, individual perceptions. Even it includes some unconscious process. Unfortunately, we conduct a couple of research and also trying to increase the validity of our measurement with adding different countries. Hopefully, we have the results from just the German data now, and we will share with you. Hopefully, you will examine. Yes, and it's really I'm very glad to listen to you once again. Thank you for the participating. Oh, is it clear, Markus?
Very clear. Thank you so much, Marcus Anthony. She talked about the influence on non-Western cultures. Marcus, we're working on it.
Yes, we are. So it's good to see you. This very informative talk, Marta, and you're a much better scholar than I am, and you have a very broad knowledge of intuitive science, which is a great thing. Yes. So thank you.
We will further work on that. We have Dr. Daud Ali from Pakistan with us. He will research intuition with healthcare people. He introduced me to a couple of medical doctors. We go more into the gut-brain axis. Hopefully we can do that, and hopefully he gets a scholarship to come to Germany. Hello, Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be among you people, all the senior academicians and researchers. It's quite an opportunity for me to learn from all of your experience and knowledge. Indeed, yes, intuition in healthcare professional is our topic, and we're going to focus on it. There are different dimensions that people, professors and researchers have discussed, and I have learned a lot from it. I do introduce you to few doctors, and one of them has actually sent you the abstract. He is in the lobby. He's as a participant. He's listening this presentation as well, Dr. Omer Awan. So he'll have his contribution, and we hope that looking forward, we are doing a good project on healthcare professionals as well. So we'll be doing a good job, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mohammed, for
Thank you so
bringing
much.
in. Who was talking? Marta?
Yeah,
It
Marta.
was me, but we had a time delay, so I stopped so that you could finish your sentence.
Yeah, we had Susan Jameson speaking before. She was just in the room, and she was talking more about the metaphysical part. Susan, maybe you can shed some light on it again.
And before
your
Susan does,
microphone.
I would like to congratulate Fatih on his new position. I'm really delighted that you have been acknowledged, and looking forward to work with you again in the future. And I would not underestimate Markus's perspective, because there are not that many experts on metaverse. So I think you are contributing something important, both of you.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, actually, I don't
And
like
for
it that Fatih has...
Dawood, yeah, for Dawood, it's very interesting. I would love to learn more about your medical research. So first of all, as I mentioned, that the study of the emergency medical professionals at the onset of COVID, it was a qualitative study. And then actually this year, two Australian researchers published a scoping review for non-clinical medical decisions. So they are looking at how medical doctors or emergency doctors make non-clinical decisions about composition of their team, organizing the priority of their patients, and so on. So that might be complementary with what you are looking at.
Yeah, and I think this is something that Fatih, when we were there for our workshop in Germany, Fatih exactly had suggested the same thing, that working with emergency doctor is kind of more relevant to what we want to look into, this intuition and healthcare professionals. So, of course, it's a very good perspective, and we've noted it down.
Susan, you need to switch on your microphone, but before you switch on the microphone,
Sorry about
in terms
that.
of the healthcare physicians, we have very much differences. They are the people who are in radiology. They are very rational, analyzing the pictures. They are taking care of patients and senior people. They need to have emotional intuition. We have the emergency doctors who need to act very fast. Now I talked to a doctor in making operations, and there's a difference between the doctors working on the bones, cracking them and putting them together, and then the ones working on the heart with precision tools and binoculars working precisely. So only within one expert field, the intuition is very, very different. But Susan.
Yeah, that is so true, Dr. I'm also a medical doctor, 30 years experience, practicing actually in intuition with my clients. However, I also research, and I've talked to a lot of different doctors, like anesthetists, who say, yes, they have huge intuition about things. Like on paper, this patient will be fine in an operation, and it ends up being a nightmare, and they had the intuition that would happen, and vice versa. But they're too scared to talk about this, because especially in the UK, they're simply not allowed to, because it's not science-based enough. So I've developed, I teach tools of intuition, and I've developed, I know about the science, or I believe I do. And because Marta was saying that she hadn't had anyone explain the science in a way that could be understood. However, earlier in my talk, I was describing how, as beings of, scientifically, everything in our body is controlled by electromagnetic signals. Our DNA release photons of light. Once we have light, we have all non-local and quantum phenomena. And also we have an overlapping of the ripples of the light waves. There's an interference pattern. And once you get information about one little bit of that light wave, because you touch it with your own light wave, you've got information about the whole wave, because light is a wave, and that's the way light works. So this is, very obvious to me. This is, on a number of levels, whether we're talking about inductance, which is two electromagnetic bodies being close to each other, or you're talking about holographic resonance because of light waves, or non-locality. I'm very much, agree with you. It's not an either or universe. Everything's going on in the human body. So it's not one theory. Everything's happening, which makes it particularly interesting.
So in similar, when I just recalled an example when I was talking to a neurosurgeon who actually operated one of the terrorist victims, Malala Yousafzai, who later on became the youngest Nobel laureate. So I happened to visit his clinic because I was taking my sister-in-law to his clinic, and he's a neurosurgeon of quite a good repute. So I said, what happened that day? And he said that apart from myself, everybody in that team wanted to go for an emergency surgery. And he said that I asked him to keep it on hold for 2 hours. That was probably his intuition, which saved the life of that Nobel laureate later on, because had they been into rush into that surgery, maybe the outcome of that treatment would have been something different. So yes, intuition for medical doctors, it's different for every profession. It has its own relevance, and even in the medical healthcare profession, with each specialization, it kind of changes its intensity and its value. So.
Dr. Marta Sinclair from Brisbane, Australia.
This is fascinating because the holographic resonance and non-local intuition have been around quite a bit, but coming from people such as Dean Radin, Ray Bradley, etc. But then in terms of the light work, as you were saying, Susan, I think Francesca McCartney may have a complementary perspective to it. And in terms of medical professionals, I agree. However, there's been a long tradition of research into intuition in nursing. Patricia Brenner, who developed her own model, etc. So maybe it was more acceptable. And now it's time to say, all right, even the medical doctors may have some intuition. So there've been some little inroads, but looking at it from different perspective. Jean-Francois Coget wrote that article about incorporation with an MD about making decisions for diagnosis, where he talks about the decision-making triangle, using expertise, meaning your medical knowledge, using emotions and something else, and how it works together, how it flows. But what I think is interesting, what I'm hearing from most of you is that I think and I believe that the pattern of how intuition is formed, etc., neurologically or psychologically may be the same, but how it's applied and where it's appropriate in particular, not only disciplines, but even subdisciplines, bone surgeon versus diagnostician versus somebody else will be different. And that's fascinating.
So Marta Sinclair from Brisbane, Australia. Thank you so much. You see, lively discussions. You inspired us. We're working on intuition next year more intensively. We broaden it up based on your advice. Marcus Anthony will help us shedding more light in the Chinese area. With Dr. Kawa, we go to the Indian culture. With Dr. Daud Ali, we go into Pakistan culture. We have Geoffrey Kalimak in Korea and Dr. Natsuko in Japan. So that will be a broader focus going away from North American research. I thank you all for the discussion. We ruined our timetable, but it was a pleasure having you, discussing with you, and hope we see you again. And please read our paper, Fatih and myself. We tried our best to make a broad approach and a measurement tool, and it works very well, and we would like to expand on that. Dr. Marta Sinclair, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I see there is quite a bit of chat and questions. So if we have not covered everything, I'm sure that Markus will compile it and then we get back to you via email or some other means. So good luck with the rest of your conference.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Marta.
Bye, Marta. Thank you.